Welcome back to another live edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Once again, coming to you after a Vikings game, and what a thrilling game it was. Vikings beat the Packers 34-31 in what was just about as crazy of a game as you could have had. The Vikings got up big like they typically do in the first half. Packers found a way to come back, scoring on every single drive they had in the second half. Zimmer's defense kind of getting torn apart once again by Aaron Rodgers. But in the end, Kirk Cousins was the one who was able to kind of put the team on his back, lead some nice drives in the fourth quarter, and then just a nice chip-in, easy field goal for Greg Joseph, who wasn't the most beautiful kick by any means, but he was able to get it through there. That's all we care about at this point. So I guess I don't know, where do you even start with this? What's your main takeaway from today's game after all the craziness that happened?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of events that transpired that you could think of like, oh, that was a turning point in the game, or maybe it was that or something like that. But I guess you just got to look at the offense in general. I think got to start with your quarterback. I think he just put the ball up there for guys to go make a play, and
Yep.
we ended up on the right side of all those plays basically today. I know he had a lot of near interceptions where the balls they're very close. They're
Yeah.
turnover worthy plays, as the analytics community would say. And I think the one that probably sticks in your mind the most is the one right at the end with about 2 minutes left. When honestly, I didn't even notice at lifetime that he didn't finish the catch.
I
Like I was
didn't
like,
either.
oh crap, dude just picked it. Now Rogers is gonna go down, milk the clock, and kick the field goal at the end. Then Crosby, they'd be the hero once again, even though
Yep.
he's been struggling through this season. And I know it came back from commercial break, and our friend Krensley, he was like, "Oh yeah, they better rule that not a catch." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, I didn't even
Right.
notice that. Like, I didn't even think it was a play." And then it comes back, and sure enough, he doesn't complete the process of the catch, and all of a sudden we had the ball in new life. So I'd probably start there. That probably felt like a big jump, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I mean, there were a lot of plays here that Kirk just threw it up, let a guy go make a play, and that's what happened. Especially with Jefferson, that was awesome. That's what you do with your best players, though. You just give them a
Exactly.
chance, and they go make a play more times than they won't. So I think that was the biggest thing. I think that's a big step forward to trust. I really thought last week would be kind of a beginning and end to us being aggressive and really getting into Jefferson no matter what the coverage was, and
Yep.
it continued this week, which is super encouraging to see that it was repeated. And it was successful once again. I hope we keep going back to the well with that, because obviously that's probably the best our offense is going to look. So I was really excited about that, just the performance of the offense in general. So, what are you thinking, Bailey? Where did you start?
Yeah. Number one is just the aggressiveness of the offense once again. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned it, especially with throwing to Jefferson while it looks like he's covered, just giving him a chance. Like, the most impressive play of the game to me was that second touchdown Jefferson caught towards the end of the game, where
Mm-hmm.
Kirk's just got a guy flying at him right in his face, and he just says, "Screw it, I'm going to throw it up to Jefferson. I'm going to give him a chance." And
What do you
Jefferson
know?
just bodies. I don't even remember who it was. Was that Savage again? I think it was
Ah,
Savage.
I thought it was Stokes, but I'm not
Maybe
sure.
it's Stokes. It was one of the
Yeah.
two. He just absolutely bodied him. They had no shot of against him one on one. So
Mhm.
that's a great play. Like Justin Jefferson, he's a stringy guy, but he can jump. He's fast. Like he can make all sorts of different plays. And if you just throw him the ball, give him a chance, like it's more often than not he's going to come down with it and he's going to make a great play. So yeah, I think Kirk just trusting him. Zimmer really, I think, just kind of trusting Kirk to trust his players or his
Yeah.
receivers. That's kind of the big thing, I saw there was a quote after the game, I think, from Zimmer. He basically told Kirk, like, you just worry about going out there and scoring points, and I'll worry about when we need to slow the game down or something along those lines. And I mean, in with how good this offense is, I just don't really think there's ever a scenario where you really need to slow this game down offensively. Because I mean, they were really trying to make Dalvin Cook work today, and for the most part, it wasn't working until the second half. They kind of kept chipping away at it. There was some nice runs in there.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't think the run blocking was great today from the offensive line. There was certainly some breakdowns in pass protection as well. I can recall like three times Mason Cole just got absolutely
His
trucked as soon as he snapped the ball.
his balance was terrible. Yeah, I know that was alarming. But at the same time, I was just thinking to myself as that was happening, I'm like, I really don't think this end result would be any different if Bradbury's in here instead. I feel like the same thing happens anyway. So it's just our hole at center. But I still feel like Cole gives us a better chance than Bradbury does at this point.
Yeah, that's what's tough. It's because it's like Mason Cole has that horrible start to the game, and it's like, well, are we better off bringing Bradbury in? Because I mean, it was extremely frustrating, but it did seem like Cole seemed to get a little better as the game went on. I think Darisaw, I'm guessing his grade probably won't be the best. I saw him get burnt a couple times by Preston Smith, one of the times causing a Kirk Cousins fumble. But
Thankfully, he recovered that himself. But
yeah, true. At least he made up for it in that way. But
yeah.
overall, that Packers defensive line is pretty good. I mean, we've known for a few years now how good Kenny Clark is up the middle. He's just dominated whoever's playing at center or guard for us. So we kind of knew that coming in. Clearly, they made it tougher to run the ball today, but just keep going to Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen had a couple nice plays. Gronklin got involved a little bit. He loves throwing to Tyler Conklin. KJ Osborne, I think he maybe only finished with one catch today, but he had a couple near catches too. Like that one that ended up being incomplete was a really nice play.
Yeah, right before the half there. Yeah, that was crazy. I don't think he had any business catching that ball. He just about came down with it. I think that was a great play, but just had to be just a hair closer to him, and I think he comes down with it.
And then he ended up leaving the game. I'm not exactly sure what the injury was with him, but hopefully it's nothing too severe because, I mean, even though we haven't really been featuring him lately, like he's still an important player and, to the success of this team. And if Adam Thielen goes down with an injury or if Justin Jefferson gets banged up, you're going to need KJ Osborne in there. So hopefully it's nothing too serious. But, man, I come away with this game just super impressed with Kirk Cousins. As much as you and I are not Kirk guys, and we've basically said we don't want him back beyond this year.
Yep.
He is making a case.
This is a statement win.
Yeah, maybe not in our minds necessarily, but he's making a case that, maybe the team should think about keeping him around. And which I know that's just a road we don't really want to go down right now.
No.
He's easily having the best season of his career. Definitely the best season with the Vikings. He's really just played great. He's taking good care of the football. Obviously, the fumbles are going to happen sometimes, especially when he doesn't know the guys are coming behind him. The picks, he threw a couple sketchy passes today, but I honestly don't mind him taking those chances because that typically will result in, hopefully have better results than just an interception every time. So, I mean, what are your overall observations on Kirk Cousins and where do you think it stands with him now as we're, over halfway through the season trying to make a playoff push?
Yeah, geez, isn't this just the ultimate Kirk conundrum? I mean, you watch him play those first two games out of the bye against Dallas where he looks totally lost, and then you watch him play against Baltimore in that second half, that was ugly, and you're like, oh man, okay, now I feel fully confident saying I don't want to see this guy beyond 2021, but then he plays a couple games like he did last week and this week against honestly pretty solid opponents, this Packers team. Some could argue that it's the best in the NFC. I mean, by record, they were coming into today. Yeah. So especially against a defense that is no slouch, you saw those rankings today towards the beginning of the game where they're basically third and everything in the NFL. And so it's a legit opponent, and he did what he wanted today. So it's just so back and forth, so up and down. I know, because he just gets suckered into it because he has a couple good games. It's oh man, maybe we could win if the circumstances are right. But then it's the circumstances aren't always going to be right every day, and you're going to probably have more ugly days than good days where everything's perfect. So I'm still out on him, but again, that could change. Let's see how we finish the season. See if we can find our way in the playoffs. If we do anything there, then I'll come back to this discussion as far as should we keep him, should we not. But right now, I'm still off that train. I still don't want to see him be our quarterback next year, even despite a huge win today. That's really all I can ask for from Kirk, really. Or one of the biggest things I could ask for from Kirk is probably winning these division games, especially against the Packers, who've been the best of the best the last decade, ever since they've had Rodgers, really. And probably goes back in the Favre days as well. But that's another thing, speaking to Kirk and then the future of this team, and then I think of Zim. Then I think against Rodgers, Zim is he has the upper hand now in overall record. I think he's 8-7-1 against Rodgers-led Packer teams, which when you think back on it, it doesn't seem like it would be that good. But realistically, I'll take that, playing 500 against Rodgers teams. It's not bad. But at the same time, it's it's not just about winning against one team too. But I think the Packers, that's a significant opponent that you got to take into consideration when he plays over 500 football or just about 500 football against Rodgers and the Packers.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the premier opponent for the Vikings every year. It's the game Vikings fans always have scheduled or circled on their calendar.
Absolutely.
Especially the home game. That's the big one. You get the fans all hyped up for that game. like luckily this was a noon kickoff. Like in my opinion, noon games are just the best to go to. You wake up in the morning, you do some tailgating, get to the stadium. It's noon. Everyone's got a ton of energy because it's not late.
Yep.
Stuff like that. I just
Totally
think,
agree.
even though it's not like technically a prime time game, I still think like the noon kickoff is the best. And then you get the Packers at home, full stadium again, which was awesome to see.
Yes.
Like, I mean, yeah, just it's a huge win. Those are the kind of wins we've been asking Kirk Cousins to get since he's been here. I think he has beaten the Packers at home once before this.
Yes, yep, 2018.
Yeah, so I mean, he's done it before, but I mean, it's great to see him have a great game once again. And there's bigger problems on this team than Kirk Cousins, obviously, but I mean, he's becoming more of a piece of the solution rather than being a problem in terms of like, not playing winning football. I think the conservative part of his game has a lot to do with like the offensive coordinator, head coach, but some of it's on him too. And I just think we've seen even if you go back to the Baltimore game, over the last several weeks that Kirk's just really stepped it up. I mean, and I'm not a Kirk guy, and I'm not trying to, sound like a Kirk stan here, but
yeah, no.
I mean, this is like the best stretch of Vikings quarterback play we've seen in a long time. Like, and it's a stretch. It's just a stretch of games. It's not necessarily going to be the full season.
This is a slippery slope to go down.
It is because like, coming up, we got San Fran on the road next week, which obviously is not going to be easy. San Fran's been looking good the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Then we go to Detroit, which should be a gimme win. But then like you got the Steelers on primetime Thursday Night Football. You got at Chicago, which we always struggle no matter how good the Bears are, on Monday Night Football, even though the Bears offense is just an atrocity. So like if Kirk can keep it up, then then I'm all for it. But that's kind of the main thing here is, can he actually keep it going?
I don't feel like it, no, but we've never seen that in the past. But you never know. Maybe this year's different, but I'd like to think. But at the same time, I'd lean more towards him reverting back to the mean, probably getting us to a 500-ish record, and that's where we currently sit right now, 5-5. But I think this 500 feels pretty hard-earned compared to most 500 records you'll have this far into the season. I think usually I wouldn't be very satisfied with this, and I'd be like, man, I don't like where we're at. But right now, considering the opponents that we've had to go through, I think I'll definitely take a 5-5 record. I think we've still left a lot to be desired because there's still those games that we'd like to get away from us. And today could have just as well been one of those because we, again, had a double-digit lead. And as it came on the TV today, heading into the fourth quarter, we had already blown like 3 fourth-quarter leads this year, tied for most in the NFL. So, like, there's certainly a lot more games that we could have won. But at the same time, I came out of the bye. We were 3-3. I was like, well, if we go 2-2 these next 4 games at least, I can live with that. And that's just what they did. So now we're in a pretty good spot to make the playoffs. And I think if we win that San Francisco game next week, I'd really dare to say that we're a lock for the playoffs then. Because if you consider the teams around us in that wild card picture, Saints look like an absolute disaster in Philly today. And then you got, because Trevor Siemian clearly is not a long-term answer. And then you got San Francisco and Carolina who you're competing with. But if you're winning against San Francisco next week, you already beat Carolina. Those are 2 head-to-head wins you already have in hand if it comes out with ties at the end. And then the other teams you're considering is a head Falcons team you just saw play on Thursday night and just get steamrolled. And then you got, who else is in that mix too? Washington's kind of coming into it now, but they're still a little buried. And then you got Seattle, I think, is out of it. So realistically, I think that'd be a massive, massive head-to-head win next week if you could pick it up in San Fran.
And that's the thing is San Fran really is not that threatening. Like their defense is not at the level it was a couple of years ago. Jimmy Garoppolo obviously is not a very consistent quarterback.
I'm not a Jimmy G guy.
No,
I think he's a poor man's Kirk Cousins.
I agree. He's, as long as you don't allow them basically to establish that run game. And Elijah Mitchell is out this week. I don't know if he'll be back next week, but they're basically down to like their 3rd string running back. So, I mean, in my mind, there's no excuse. Your team's fairly healthy outside of Danielle Hunter obviously being out for the season. So in my mind, there's no excuse. Go into San Fran next week, get that win, and then you're in the driver's seat for the wild card position there. And that's the thing too. Like I'd rather get the 6th seed to play the 3 seed than, just squeak in at the 7th seed and have to play the 2 seed, because like the 6-3, you have more. I think you have a better chance. I guess it kind of depends who the opponent is, but like, would you
Well,
want to take another shot at like Dallas, or would you rather play at Lambeau or something? Because that's really what it could come down to, or go to Tampa Bay, something like that.
yeah,
So
that's what I was just going to ask you. Would you, after a day like today, and obviously this could be very dependent on uh, what Week 17 looks like when we go to Green Bay for Sunday Night Football, but that's the question I was just going to ask you. Would you prefer to play a Green Bay team you've won against this year, or at Lambeau in the cold, or would you rather take on like the 7-time Super Bowl champ Tom Brady in a wild card game on his home field, or would you rather take a crack at Dallas and Jerry World or something like? I truthfully I don't know. It's a dangerous game to play there, picking your opponent, but I'd probably have to lean towards Dallas. I'd
yep,
probably, even though we lost to Dallas just 2 weeks ago at home with a backup quarterback, I don't know. There's just something there that I feel like Dallas could just fall apart, just
yep.
because I think that's what the Cowboys do. Who are we to say we haven't a Super Bowl in 40 years? But I mean, granted, when's the last time Dallas really did anything in the playoffs either? So,
Yeah, Dallas kind of
truthfully,
has the. Yeah, go ahead, finish.
truthfully, I'd have to take Dallas there, but I mean, a lot could change with that, and I think it's
Yeah,
very injury dependent as well. What these rosters look like at the end of the season, assuming we do squeak into the playoffs in the first place. But
yeah, I would go with Dallas too, just because they kind of have the choke factor like we do.
yes,
Whereas like Tom Brady, he's a clutch player. Like he'll pull it out if he needs to.
that's beat Tom
Aaron
Brady in
Rod,
the playoffs feels like, whew, that's a
Aaron
steep
Rodgers,
task.
like we played at home today. We could not stop him to save our lives. He threw for almost 400 yards. Like
Yep.
I don't want to face them at Lambeau in
No.
January. Like we're already going to do that once this year. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it'd be Dallas for me. You'd play in a domed environment, obviously similar to your home field.
Hmm.
You got Dak Prescott, obviously, who's not as good as Rodgers and Brady. I mean, he's very good. Don't get me wrong, but I mean,
Yes.
he didn't look so hot against the Chiefs defense today. So like, I mean, yeah, Dallas. I just think there's a little bit of inexperience there. There's a little bit of choke factor there. So I think Dallas would be my ideal opponent of those top teams, assuming like Arizona gets the 1 seed. Because honestly, I would take another shot at Arizona too.
I would too, actually, and I'm still not totally convinced of this Arizona team. There's just something there too that I think it's the experience with them, just
Yeah.
because they'll have a quarterback and a coach who've never been to the playoffs before. So even though we haven't won that many playoff games in our own right, I mean, we've still been there. We've still been through it with this quarterback coach combo. So I'd like our experience there,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I feel like obviously we took Arizona all the way to the wire, and we should have won that game. Really, if it comes down to a 37-yard kick, but I think that's a good point to bring up that I wouldn't mind playing them either. So a lot of football left to be played, a lot of
Yeah.
seeding to be figured out, and seeing if we can keep a string rolling to get in the playoffs in the first place. But yeah, I have to lean towards Arizona and Dallas right now.
Yeah, for sure. And like obviously you never want to play Rodgers or Brady in the playoffs. So
Oh,
I don't know. It'd be nice to avoid the Packers. It'd be nice for the Packers to get bounced in the first round, but I don't know like what wild card matchup if they could end up with the Rams somehow.
whew,
But I feel like the Rams are probably going to be the 5 seed, so the Packers would have to slide to the 4. There'd
yep,
be some maneuvering going on there, obviously. But there's a few weeks until that plays out, so we don't have to look that far ahead. Now it's just
true,
about
true.
we're past the point of let's suck and get a good pick because it's not going to happen. We're 5-5. Even if we finish with 5 wins, we'll maybe just be picking inside the top 10. So at this point, you might as well go for the playoffs, make that push. You got the talent to maybe get in the playoffs and steal a game. So at this point, you might as well go for it and put your trust in Kirk Cousins, let him throw the ball to Jefferson and Thielen. And I mean, Dalvin Cook, I still think he's kind of nursing that ankle injury he had earlier in the season. He just doesn't quite look as explosive as he did like week 1 or week 2 before the
Mhm.
injury. But I mean, he's still looking pretty good. Like I feel like he's coming close on a couple of these runs to really breaking one. And at the same time, I just don't think the offensive line's done a good job of opening up many holes. And, hand in hand with that, defenses know when we're running because we're very predictable, especially when we run. And they load the box up and we don't really change out of those plays. So Dalvin is running against like 8-man fronts and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm not sitting here trying to make excuses for Dalvin, but I mean, because really the passing game needs to be the emphasis of this team from here on out, because Justin Jefferson is an absolute superstar. I said this last week. He is the Minnesota Vikings. Like, he is the face of the franchise. He's our superstar player. And in a modern, NFL where you're throwing the ball all over the yard, you have a legit top 10, like maybe borderline top 5 receiver already in his second year in the league. So just feed Justin Jefferson, man. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. I think good things happen when you put the ball in his hands. So I think we're going to get him involved as much as possible early and often in games to get him going. I think the sky's the limit for him. So I'm really hoping that we keep riding this wave with him going forward here. It starts next week in a huge game in San Francisco. So I'm hoping that there's just more to come with, I guess, the offense continuing to score early and often, because I know they've been able to score on these opening drives. Everybody knows that, but it's just, I think their scoring today was very consistent. I think they sustained drives throughout, and that was good to see. Personally, I was worried, like, towards the beginning of the game, that was just going to turn into one of those games where we went 3 and out a lot, and our defense would be on the field a lot, and then that would be a recipe for disaster. So I was really encouraged that we honestly had a lot of third down conversions. I think that's a big thing for this team, especially with the defense that isn't necessarily top flight. So I think we got to continue not only leading into Jefferson, but just this offense in general to carry us to these wins like this. Like today, we literally beat Aaron Rodgers at his best, which that's pretty incredible. So that's a testament to how good this offense really can be and the heights we can reach. And I'd actually like to say real quick, I just thought of this on I didn't mention this at the beginning. I wanted to. I just didn't get around to it. But speaking of us winning this game and getting down to the end and winning in a clutch situation, what did you think of Dalvin? Looked like he purposely went down inside the 10 when he broke one. And honestly, it looked like he could have put that in the end zone, but he knew better. And I thought that was great awareness. At least that's the way I interpreted it. What do you think?
Yeah, so just a quick humble brag here. I had Rodgers, Cook, and Jefferson on my fantasy team today. And like, I was kind of hoping, like, in one breath, I'm kind of hoping Dalvin Cook like runs it in for a touchdown, and then maybe Rodgers can even get the ball back and get more points. But then, like, obviously Vikings are my number one priority. I want the Vikings to win the game. Super smart play of Dalvin to just go down. And he basically said it after the game. He's like, I probably could have scored there, but I wanted to go down because I knew we could not give the ball back to Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
He knows enough about this rivalry that, you cannot trust Aaron Rodgers with the ball at the end of the game.
We've seen this movie way too many times. I distinctly remember them playing San Francisco earlier this year. There's like 30-some seconds left. San Francisco's like, oh, yeah, we just won this game. We just kicked the field goal, or what was it? Can't remember the score, touchdown or kick the field goal, whatever it was, with like 30 seconds left. Oh, we just won this game. And then what do you know? You give Rodgers a timeout in 30 seconds or something. They go right down the field, kick the game-winning field goal at the horn, and it's like, of course. So it's like you don't want to give him absolutely any time. Even Zimmer said that after the game. He was like, yeah, I know our best chance of winning is probably Rodgers being on the bench. So
and I don't disagree. Like, it was getting to the point, and I said this in our group chat too. It's like, I would rather our offense close this game out than give the ball back to the defense, because the previous drive, we'd seen the defense give up a 75-yard touchdown to Valdez. Just leave them completely uncovered. They have Xavier Woods on him, basically, which is just a completely unfair matchup. Like, he has no shot. So I was almost kind of surprised to see the Packers try and score that quickly. Like, obviously they're going to take it if they have it, but like, when Rodgers took that ball, he had to know that there was no one else back there, and the Vikings were going to be getting the ball back. So the Packers probably have a little more faith in their defense, given just how well their defense has been playing this year. But I mean, when it comes down to it in the NFL, especially if you have a good offense like the Vikings do, like the Packers do, I would want my offense to be the last unit on the field.
Yes, for sure. And I know it's a dangerous game to play, to put the game on our kickers' legs, just because we've been burned by that, snake bitten how many times in the past. I mean, just the season, obviously think of that Arizona game. But it's like, once we got inside the 10-yard line, it's like we should definitely just sit on this ball and just burn all the clock out, because they only have one timeout left at that point. So then I think it was a great move by them just to take a knee. Don't put anything to chance as far as like fumbling the ball on a run play or Green Bay letting us score a touchdown because of that or something. I think they played it exactly right at the end there. I'm really happy to see that awareness, that football IQ, because it's like our kicker better be able to make a field goal
Yeah.
when we're literally in goal to goal distance. Like you should be able to trust your kicker to do that. So I think it was great that we just sat on the ball and milked the clock away, so we could just kick it right at the end to finish it with the 29-yarder from Greg Joseph. So I really enjoyed the game management, like good game management being on display, because I know there's been times in the past before where we have not seen that. So I think
Yeah.
that was huge.
And that's kind of what I like about Greg Joseph too. Like obviously it was not a hard kick. Every kicker in the NFL should make that kick, but
Mhm.
they kept showing him on the sidelines. He didn't look rattled. That's kind of what I've noticed about him all year. I mean, obviously like that Arizona game that was heartbreaking. It's too bad he missed a kick that he probably should have made.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like outside of that, he's been very reliable. He's been pretty solid. I mean, he's just kind of like that steady hand, and that's kind of what you need at kicker. Like the Vikings aren't
Especially on
going
the
to
Zimmer team.
the Vikings aren't going to get a Justin Tucker type. They tried with
No.
Blair Walsh, and he kind of fell apart. And basically, I think in the NFL, you just need a solid kicker that is going to make more than he misses. And then on the other side, you got Mason Crosby, who's been the worst kicker in the league this year, and he missed a field goal today that could have potentially cost the Packers the game there too. So
32-yarder. Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of nice to see the Vikings come out of a Packer game with the better kicking performance, even though we
Isn't
did
that
miss an
weird?
extra point. But yeah, just every phase of this game, outside of defense kind of sputtered in the second half, but
Mhm.
good special teams play today too. I thought there was no crucial mistakes there.
No.
And Wangu didn't really get much of a chance at all to return any kicks, which was a bummer. But
Yeah.
I'm sure the Packers know better, especially kicking in an indoor stadium, to give Wangu any chances. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with Greg Joseph overall. I mean, obviously, easy kick should have been made, but at the same time, I mean, he still got to do it, and he got iced and everything at the end, and didn't look phased, and he made the kick. So that's what we need. Because honestly, if that was like Daniel Carlson a few years ago, like who knows, would we have trusted him to make that kick? Like probably not.
Oh yeah, I know. We would have been hanging on the edge of our seats. I remember Carlson missing 3 kicks that could have won us the game in Green Bay that first season with Kirk when we ended up tying. Just because I think the worst one is probably the one that ended the game when he kicked it as there's no time left and um, he just pushed it wide right. We had the ball right in between the uprights, center of the field, and he just missed it from 35 out. So yeah, that's that. Coming into a situation like this, you'd feel a bit more nervous, but you feel good about it just because Greg Joseph, like you said, it seems like he's got a pretty calming presence. That's good to have an NFL kicker because, like, I'm sure everybody's heard the reference before, the comparison to like a golfer, basically having the yips and just not getting in your own head. And
Right.
I think he does a good job of staying composed and going out there and doing his job. So I think it's great that he went out there and did it. Like you said, it should be expectation to make a 29-yard kick, but at the same time, you still got to do it, and he did. So this is a huge win for us. And now, I mean, you never know what would happen in overtime either. Who'd get the ball first? Like if Packers get the ball first in overtime, like that might be it. But
Yeah, exactly.
so this is huge momentum, and I just hope that this isn't the point where basically the team suckers us all back into believing again and talking about like the possibilities of what could be this season and like, oh, this is the best version of what we could look like against some of the best teams, and we could still win those games. But then once they do that, everybody's bought back in. Then just come out and lay an egg, and then just let us all down and get us all pissed off, being like, we might as well lose out, get that draft pick. But I'm still gonna enjoy this win for now. But I'm trying to keep a level head as far as tempering expectations of where this team could go this season.
Yeah, me too. I mean, they have so much to prove to us fans yet. Like when you lose to the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 1, a game you probably should have won.
Yep.
Obviously, you lose in heartbreaking fashion to the Cardinals. You look like crap against the Lions. You completely blew
the Browns.
Yeah, the Browns game was atrocious on offense.
Yep.
The Ravens game, you completely blew that one too. Like, there's so many missed opportunities here that if the Vikings had just won 2 of those games that they probably should have, we'd literally be
in a division chase.
Yeah, we'd be in the division lead right now after, the tiebreaker with the Packers.
Oh yeah.
Because we'd have 2 more wins, 2 less losses. But yeah, it's the shoulda, coulda, woulda, and that's the Vikings for you. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the talent is there. There's no questioning it. There's no doubt. And the defense is aging, and they're going to have to make some, adjustments on that side of the ball in the offseason. They're going to have to get rid of some guys, bring some other guys in. The offense, though, like, especially if you decide you maybe want to ride with Kirk for another year or two, the offense is pretty set, like, across the board. And that's not even factoring that we have Irv Smith at tight end. Like, he's not even – I mean, Tyler Conklin's not even the best tight end on the team. So Irv Smith is out. I mean, we could be even a better offense with Irv Smith. So, like, it's crazy to think about. But, yeah, in terms of, like, this season, though, and, like, Zimmer trying to save his job and all that, like, I personally am going to need more than a wild card berth and elimination in the first round to want to keep Zimmer around, want to keep Kirk around. Because, yeah, games like today are awesome, and Kirk played fantastic, and it was so much fun. Like, that's what a Vikings-Packers game should be all about.
Yep, and wins against the Packers, all those feel so good at the end, like way more than just your typical win on Sunday.
Yes, but if we finish the season 8-9 or 9-8 and don't win a playoff game, then what does it really matter?
Yeah,
so sure. It's definitely a total body of work thing, and I mean, yeah, like you said, just enjoy it while we can right now. But one thing I did want to bring up earlier is that drive towards the end of the first half, where I think we threw like a 4-yard pass, then we ran it with Dalvin for a few yards, and then 3rd and 1. What do? We motion Dalvin Cook out of the backfield, and we run a pitch to CJ Ham. Like,
that was so stupid.
Why is a fullback pitch in your playbook at all?
Yeah.
Like, the slowest runner out of all your running backs / fullbacks, and you do a pitch to him, like a pitch where the running back needs to get to the outside. You do a pitch with your fullback. It made 0 sense, and I was so livid at the time. That was really the only, like, true nitpick I had of Kubiak's game today. That was pretty much the only horrible play call.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know what that was on 3rd and 1. Like, it looked, like you said, it looked fine. Like, pre-snap, looked like any other play we'd probably, or any other formation we'd line up in on a 3rd and 1, or just a short yard situation. And then, like you said, you motion out Dalvin, and let's pitch the ball to Ham. When our pitch plays weren't even working with Dalvin to begin with, then let's do it with Ham and see if it works. Like, no, that play got blown up, and then we end up punting the ball, and then Packers get the ball, and then they take the lead. And then I think that was when we were only up 6, right?
I'm trying to think, was that before or after the half?
That was after the half.
Okay, it was after the half. So, yeah, then the Packers would have gone up by 1, I think.
I think so. I think that's when we had 24-23, and it's like, oh, man, if that comes back to really bite us, that's going to be very frustrating. But like you said, that's probably the only play I can think back on and be like, man, what are we doing? Because the rest of it, I could at least make a case for that, like, oh, yeah, that seemed like the right call in that situation, or at least seemed like it could work. But I was just really happy to see all the vertical passing that we were using today. I mean, our receivers did whatever they wanted with their corners, and it's really good to see us just put trust in them because they are some of the best in the game. And I think Thielen, he deserves a lot more recognition than really I think he's been getting this year. That I think the guy is still very good at what he does, and I think he always shows up for these Packer games, especially. Yep. And what do you think of the comments that came out after the game that basically said that, or it was revealed that Thielen talked to basically the players in the locker room about how important this Vikings-Packers rivalry is and what it means for this franchise? What did you think of that, about him addressing that to this current group of guys?
I think that's pretty incredible, honestly, like, for him to step up and just kind of say, like, hey, a lot of you haven't been around long enough to, like, realize this, but I mean, this is a big deal. Team. Yeah, this is a big deal to a lot of people in this state. It's obviously a big deal to a lot of people in Wisconsin too. So, like, it's a big rivalry game. It's, like I said earlier, it's the game everyone circles on their calendar. And yeah, I mean, like Jefferson kind of said after the game too in his interview, like, we knew who was coming into town today. We wanted to put on a show. And I think that's important. Like, not just saying, oh, it's just another game. Like, you don't want to take the emotion out of it. Like,
you bring extra juice to this Packers game.
Exactly. And that's exactly what they did today. And you're right. Like, Adam Thielen, he's so reliable. He scores, it seems like he always gets a touchdown against the Packers. He's our new Rudolph in the red zone, really. Like, I mean, the touchdown he scored today, I just couldn't believe the defense they played on him. Kevin King was, like, way off of him. I have no clue what he was doing. But
Yes.
Kevin King's also horrible at corner. So it has been nice as Vikings, even though he did seal a game against the Vikings was that last year, a couple of years ago? The back of the end zone, Kirk threw a pick to him. I think that was a couple of years ago.
That might have been a couple of years ago. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
trying to think which game that was. Was that at home or on the road? Are you talking?
that was at Lambeau.
That's at Lambeau. Yes. No, I remember that. That's right. We had a first and goal. We drove all the way down the field, just pounding the rock, doing whatever we wanted. First and goal, play action. He throws one at the back of the end zone for Diggs. And yeah, that's right. Kevin King made a play on the ball and it was picked and then ended the game. That's right. Yep. I recall now. Yep.
So that's about the only play he's made in this rivalry. But anyways, Thielen had like the quietest 82 yards that I've seen today. Like obviously Jefferson was the star of the show, but Thielen's always there. He's always going to get a touchdown against the Packers, and he's Kirk's favorite red zone target, which is always nice too. And him stepping up and assuming that leadership role, telling these guys what this game means, that's big time.
Dude, you know what's awesome? I feel like I can think back in every single game we played against this Packers team ever since Kirk got here. Or I think it even goes back farther than that, actually. But I think in the Zimmer era, feels like every time we play the Packers, we always have some play in there that's just a huge, like 50-plus yard play or something like that. And I live for those. Like I feel like Diggs had a number of those at Lambeau. I think the first one I always think of was probably the second game we had Kirk. He threw that bomb Diggs to bring us back into the game to end up forcing overtime in the end. But like, I feel like you have one of those plays, and then I feel like Jefferson got his own today. That realistically, I couldn't believe the NFL didn't have a better angle on it. That I thought was probably a touchdown, but all the angles we were seeing on Fox, like I didn't understand that. Like, how did we not have a better angle on that? I thought there were supposed to be pylon cams or something like that. But they'll basically show you right in front of you, like, is this a touchdown? Is this not? We didn't have a clear enough angle to really make a distinction one way or another. So that was kind of frustrating. But again, that was like a 50-plus yard play, and I'm glad that Jefferson is putting his stamp on this rivalry. I think that's huge because I feel like that felt like a Diggs trademark play today. So I was happy to see it was Jefferson. So
yeah, I agree with you. I don't get why they can't have a camera that's right along the goal line. Some games they do, and some games they don't. Like you think that'd be a requirement of an NFL game. So I'm not exactly sure why that's the case. Maybe the refs get a better view of it than what they show us on TV. But yeah, I thought that was super frustrating that you couldn't really tell from any of the angles if he was in or not. And granted, it didn't matter. We scored on the very next play. Kind of a dumb challenge by Zimmer that, luckily didn't end up costing us anything, later down the line in terms of challenges. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I got Dalvin his one touchdown for the game, so I can't be too mad about that. But it was like you mentioned earlier too, like it's a beautiful thing to, watch a Vikings-Packers game and you get Dalvin, Jefferson, and Thielen all in the end zone in the same game.
Yes, it's a beautiful sight. I know that's how you draw it up when you think about it, like how you want this game to go. That's really it. I think the only thing you could have asked for today is probably Dalvin getting over 100 yards, but it just wasn't in the cards because they stopped our run game pretty good, especially in that first half. But it was kind of picturesque for this offense. Couldn't really think about it really put it together any better. So you'd just like to see your defense play a little better in that second half. But other than that, I got to say I'm very impressed with this team's performance today. And speaking of the defense, I know there weren't a ton of positives, but I'd say one of them was I thought Pat P looked fine today. I didn't see him get cooked on anything right out of on really any big plays. So I was happy to see that right out of his injury here because he just got activated off IR. Was that this morning or yesterday or something? So I think that was huge for him to only be on the IR the minimum amount of weeks and come back and make an impact in a huge game for us. So I was happy to see that. And really, I thought Bashad Breeland played a lot better today than I thought he would. I thought Rodgers should go after him all day, but realistically, I didn't see any bad plays from Breeland. I think the worst in the secondary is probably Woods today, but I think he got put in a lot of bad spots where maybe he shouldn't have been in coverage in the first place. But
yeah, exactly. And I did notice they sprinkled in some Cameron Bynum.
That was cool.
They kind of moved They kind of moved Harrison Smith around down towards the line of scrimmage.
That's cool. They can let him roam like that with Bynum. That's really nice flexibility.
I agree because, like, with Vigil's been all right, but like without having like a true like third linebacker, and Anthony Barr obviously is hurt in and out, and I'm guessing he's probably going to retire after this season, just the way it's looking. But
he might.
Like you could play Harrison Smith almost as like a pseudo linebacker at this point.
That's pretty cool. I like
Like,
that thought.
I'm sure Zimmer's, got some thoughts going in his head with stuff he can do with that. But I mean, obviously, you want Harrison Smith back there ball hawking too sometimes. But
Yeah.
you can bring in special packages where Harrison Smith's down playing linebacker, he's down there blitzing. Because, this guy can do everything on the field that you need him to do. And it'd be really cool to see what Zimmer can come up with to kind of close out the season here with the defense and having 3 good safeties. Dancer was in for a little while today too. I thought he played just fine. So there weren't any true blatant, other than the defensive line just not getting to Rodgers in the second half. There wasn't any true blatant horrible players, I guess, on the defensive side of the ball that I can recall at least.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I just thought of this. I forgot that Peterson left for at least a point to the game
Yeah, he did.
for a period of time. But when he did play, it didn't look too bad. But I think it looked like the pass rush was just lacking a little bit today. I don't think we got home enough as much as we should have, especially late in the game, really. And after what was that, Jenkins went out? That's really terrible to see that, because I know just as a general football fan, you can recognize that Jenkins is a pretty good offensive lineman. I think everybody was singing his praises last year because he's really good at left guard. And this year, I think he's filled in pretty admirably at left tackle, but with Bakhtiari out. But so that sucks. He tore his ACL, but it felt like we should have taken more advantage of that than we did in this game. I think I was expecting a little bit more of edge rush penetration than we had, but it was just lacking and gave Rodgers way too much time. And obviously bad things are going to happen when you do that, because I'm pretty sure on 2 of Rodgers' touchdowns today, I saw that he had over 6 seconds to throw the ball or something. Like, that can't happen with it. Even if you have a elite secondary, he's still going to pick you apart. So that can't happen.
Yeah, and in terms of the defensive end position, Everson Griffin didn't have a great game today. DJ Wanham, he got back there a couple times, but he never really finished him off.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I'm kind of thinking that we might have to draft another defensive end, maybe in the first round this season.
Which I wouldn't hate that in the first round. I can live with an edge rusher in the first round.
Yeah.
What I'd get a little bit more pissed about is probably taking another center or something. But
right, I was going to say at least what I think it's coming down to now for this team. And, once again, it's going to depend on who the coach is, if we have a new GM, if they're keeping Kirk. There's a bunch of variables at play. Yes. But in terms of, what this current team would do, they would draft either a defensive end or a corner in the first round, and I am absolutely certain of that.
I totally agree. Another player that I would be, or another couple guys I would be pretty excited about, even though the need is absolutely not there, especially after a game like today when you see a little bit of everything from your offense. But I'd be excited after their huge game against Michigan State. I think I could really get behind a Chris Olave or a Garrett Wilson or something like that. Would be pretty fun. But at the same time, talking realistically, I think you're right that it probably got to be a corner and edge rusher there.
Yeah, which is fine, because the defense is going to have to be rebuilt. Because we mentioned earlier, the offense is pretty well set. At least for the next few years. We'll see how much more you can get out of Dalvin beyond this year. You still got Madison though too. Kenny Nwangu's an intriguing player at running back.
Oh yeah.
Jefferson's going to be really good for the next, hopefully, at least 10 years or so. Thielen's getting towards the end of his career, but he's still got some juice in the tank. The way he plays, he's not going to be a burner down the field. So, possession receiver, exactly. We mentioned the 2 tight ends already with Irv Smith coming back next year. Tyler Conklin, KJ Osborne's emergence as well. So, we don't really need another receiver, but at the same time, you're just kind of stashing it, I guess. Not even necessarily stashing, but you're basically buying insurance for Adam Thielen if he were to get hurt or really decline as he gets older here. But even if we bring in an offensive coach, I could really just see him saying, okay, we need another edge rusher. So that's going to be our pick, because the defense I like what we have with this offense. So we just need to build the defense up,
Yeah. I feel like I like the philosophy of building defense from the front back. So I'd probably start with your front 4. I feel like championship teams usually have a pretty solid front 4, if not a elite front 4, borderline elite front 4. So I think I'd probably start there with an edge rusher, then work your way back with a corner or something. And like you said, obviously there's a lot of dominoes to fall here, and who knows how the board would shape up and where our draft pick or maybe multiple picks would land. But at the same time, I think I would, hypothetically speaking, if you had your if you had your choice and had your preference, I'd probably lean towards an edge rusher because I feel like those can single-handedly win you games sometimes. Because we've seen Danielle Hunter just be an absolute game wrecker. So if you got another guy who's pretty solid on the other end, then I'd be really excited about that. And I think that could win you some gritty ball games. So I think that's probably the way to go. But at the same time, like, a lot to be decided yet this season. So, and truthfully, speaking of this season in general and as a whole, and looking at the NFL and the playoff pictures, both in the NFC and the AFC, like, it's amazing to me that you have no idea where anybody's going to finish, let alone the Vikings, but really anybody. I mean, who's good right now? Who can you like beat the table for and be like, hey, this team is really a team to be reckoned with. That's going to be one of the last few teams left in this thing to win the Super Bowl. I couldn't tell you. I'd say this Packers team that we played today is probably a pretty strong contender, but at the same time, it's like if they have all these injuries, you just never know if they'll be able to make it all the way to the end. And I don't know. There's just so much unknown. I think 1 week you're going to get a great version of a team, but then you come out the next against some lesser opponent and they just look like crap. So it's like, who do you like right now?
That's the thing. Like the Titans today, the Titans were on that hot streak. They had beaten the Chiefs, the Bills,
And
the
they
Rams.
also beat the Rams. Yep.
Yeah, like they were on
a lot of good teams.
They were on a tear, and then they lose to the Texans. Yeah, and then they lose to the Texans. Like,
I know.
It makes
what is
no
that?
sense. Like the NFC, you got the Cardinals at 9-2, and they've won a couple games without Kyler Murray, which is impressive. Like that defense is pretty good, but the Vikings almost beat them. It's not like they're impossible to beat. It's with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, and like the Packers. Yeah, they're the 2 seed right now. Dallas is the 3 seed, which Dallas we lost to with the backup quarterback, but they've had some rough games here lately. They looked like crap against Denver.
They got trounced by Denver, and Denver is not a good team.
No, and then the offense looked bad against Kansas City today, and CeeDee Lamb got hurt, I saw. So that's something to monitor.
Cooper's already out.
Yeah, exactly. So then you got the Bucs, who, like, realistically, I'm probably the most afraid of the Bucs just because of the Tom Brady factor and all the weapons they have on offense.
But they just lost to a bad Saints team a couple weeks ago that hasn't beaten anybody since.
Exactly, and they lost to the Washington football team as well. So
yeah, what is that?
That's what's crazy about the NFL. Like, especially if you look at the AFC playoff picture. So the Colts had a great win today against the Bills. They're 6-5. They're the 9 seed right now.
I know.
Like, that's insane.
Look at that playoff picture. I think literally from 5 to like 11 or 12. Pretty sure everybody's at like 500 or maybe a game below it or something like that.
Yeah, because you got Pittsburgh is the 5 seed at 5-3-1.
And I bet you they lose tonight against the LA Chargers on the road, just because Pittsburgh. I think they're a weird team. I think their record is much better than they actually are. And they struggled and looked super ugly to get to a tie against the winless Lions last week. So, like, I feel like that says a lot. But at the same time, we were in the same spot, basically, where we had to grind out a win with a 54-yarder as time expired. But at the same time, it's like, think about the depth there of all these teams that are probably somewhere on average, above average, below average. Kind of depends on who you talk to about each of these teams. But at the same time, like, there's so much that could happen there.
And that's why I'm so frustrated with this Vikings team, because, like, if we were in a position where we could win the division this year, just be one of the top 4 seeds, just get at least one home playoff game, like, that's all I'm asking for, because this NFC is kind of wide open. The AFC is certainly wide open. Yes. Like, there's no one team right now that I'm, like, truly afraid of. I mentioned maybe the Bucs, but, like, maybe you get lucky and the Bucs get bounced and you never have to play them, But like, having to be a wild card team and play 3 road games, like, that's just asking a lot to get to the Super Bowl. Yeah. And that's why, like, it's like, man, if they could have just taken advantage of some of these games, and if they were tied with the Packers right now at 8-3, or what would it be? 8-3, 7-3, something like that. But
because what are we right now? We're 5-5.
We're 5-5.
We'd be 7-3. Packers would be 8-3.
Yeah, because Packers haven't had their bye yet.
Yeah, so you'd have a chance to time up by the time the Packers. Well, really, you could take the lead next week with the Packers playing against the LA Rams, and then we're playing San Fran. But
that's
still, like, you'd be right there. That's moral of the story, though. So that would change a lot of things. So, like you said, it is too bad that we're not at least the top 4 team in this NFC, because like there's a lot of opportunity there for you to make some noise and make a run, and potentially this could be a year where you go to the Super Bowl, just because there's no clearly dominant team in
And I remember
either conference.
And I remember we talked about that in the offseason, like just kind of looking at these teams in general. Like obviously Tampa Bay is a Super Bowl champ, but like are they really going to be able to repeat? Brady's another year older, and the
Yep.
Bucks, they were like a 5 seed last year.
Yeah.
And like we weren't big believers in the Packers because it's like how many 13 win seasons can they really have in a row? Um, and like obviously the Cardinals, we didn't see them, getting off to this kind of a start. So like we kind of thought like, okay, who in the NFC is really, someone to be afraid of? And then it's like the Rams get Stafford, and the Rams looked really good at the start of the season, but now they're struggling.
No, they lost back to back. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, it's kind of turned out that way where you're not really afraid of anybody, but at the same time, the Vikings haven't lived up to what their expectations should be either. So you
No.
can't really trust that they would go in and beat somebody, upset somebody either.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, what do you make of all of it? Well, if you think about a realistic possibility as far as your path goes towards a Super Bowl this year, as a wild card, you're probably gonna have to go through, like, let's say a Green Bay in the wild card weekend. Then you play a team like maybe, I don't know, in the second round. Let's say
Cardinals or Rams, probably.
Cardinals or Rams, yep. And then you could potentially play the other one, or the Bucks or something in the NFC Championship. But think about how many great wins you'd have to stack on top of each other in 3 consecutive weeks, all on the road.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
that's a pretty tall order. So the odds still aren't great for us to make the Super Bowl, but they'd be a little bit better if we're playing at least one home game there.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'll be interested to see how we match up with the Rams the day after Christmas.
Yes, I think that's a good litmus test.
Yeah, because that we could definitely we'll probably be fighting for a playoff spot at that point still, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams will probably try to be fighting for a division. I'm guessing they'll try and get turned around here and stay in that divisional race with Arizona. So, yeah, I'm really curious how we'd stack up with the Rams, because if we can beat the Rams at home, beat the Packers at home, like that's pretty encouraging. Granted, we lost to the Cowboys with a freaking backup quarterback, but there's also a primetime game coming out of a bye. Not trying to make excuses, but that's just kind of the way the Vikings have always been under Zimmer. Come out of the bye flat, especially like in a primetime game. So, yeah, I don't know. Like it'd be impressive, and it'd give me some faith going into the playoffs. But US Bank is such a beautiful stadium, and the crowds there are just great. It deserves home playoff games, and we just haven't been able to deliver that since the Minneapolis Miracle.
Yep, I know this fan base deserves it. I think a home playoff game would be so electric, because we haven't had that since 2017, since that magical season, and I think we need another one, just because look at all these games the Vikings have played, especially on the road. Like, you notice like there's a Vikings presence there, and it's like this team has a significant fan base that I think can really get behind them, even when we're like not even playing our best football. And I think it would just get even more heightened if we are really playing for something. So that would be a lot of fun to get a home game again. But again, even after this win today, I don't like our division chances at all. I think we're still aiming for a wild card. So it's gonna be a lot of road games once again to try and get to the Super Bowl, which obviously isn't optimal, but yeah, at least gotta give yourself a chance.
The only way we can get back in this divisional race is basically if Rodgers has to miss a few games. If he gets banged up somehow. He's already had
they
COVID,
have to lose next week against the Rams.
Yeah, they'd have to lose to the Rams. He'd have to get banged up and miss a couple. Yep. I think that's really our only shot. And then it would still come down to that game at Lambeau in January. Yep. So,
that's
which, I'm sure that would obviously be a tough task. So, yeah, the division's going to be pretty much a long shot. We just dug ourselves in way too much of a hole to start the season. So, do you have any other final thoughts before we wrap up here on today's exciting win, or just the season outlook in general?
Yeah, obviously, I feel like I'm hitting a high of the season. There's certainly been a lot of ebbs and flows. I feel like we've had more downs than we've had ups, even though technically we've won as many games as we've lost.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't. So I feel like that. And like on the one hand, most years I wouldn't be satisfied with the 5-5 record, but like this year feels a little bit more acceptable with the with the depth of these conferences, as far as like there not being any horrible teams, and like we even for the handful of teams that really aren't very good, we've only played really the one that I could think of off the top of my head with Detroit.
Yeah.
So I think sitting right now, 10 games in at 5-5 is pretty solid. I feel like again we've left a lot to be desired, but I think we're just where we want to be as far as uh, our goals after or during the bye week when it's like you're looking ahead, looking at the rest of the season, like what do you realistically want? And
Yeah.
I would I said I would take 2-2 with these first 4 games on the bye, and that's what we've done, even though it's been a lot more unconventional and I thought we would have done losing the
Yeah.
first 2 than winning the next 2. But I mean, here we are with a chance at everything. Everything's still on the table. So I think we got to start with a huge game next week at San Francisco because, like I said at the beginning of this, I think if you win that, barring any significant injuries down the stretch, I'd virtually call us a lock for the playoffs.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you whatsoever. I think next week is, there's a lot of marbles for next week. Like,
Yes.
because then you knock San Francisco down to 5-6,
Yep.
or 5-6. We'd be 6-5 plus have the tiebreaker, so we basically have a 2-game advantage on them.
Yep.
The Saints are in a free fall. The Eagles are kind of climbing, but like I'm not really sure that they're legit. So,
Yep.
I mean, you could really put some distance in there between yourself and then the teams behind you. So, yeah, next week's a big game. Is that a 3:30 game next week?
Yeah, it's 3:30 since we're out on the West Coast.
That's kind of what I figured. So that makes sense. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. At least it's not it's not a prime time night game or anything like that. But
True.
hopefully, I don't know. Hope maybe they can get Dalvin going next week and open some things up. I don't know. I mean, just keep throwing to frickin' Jefferson because I don't know what the Niners cornerback situation looks like, but I'm sure it's nothing crazy good. So
I think the biggest thing there is probably just keeping Kirk upright enough against their D line. Even though their D line isn't what it was when they went to the Super Bowl, I still think it's a big physical D line that we're going to have to contend with. So I think that'd be the most important piece of that for our offense next week.
For sure. So yeah, we'll chat more Vikings throughout the week here as well. And yeah, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We recently went over 200 subscribers, so we're super pumped about that. I'm looking forward to keep growing this channel, keep talking Minnesota sports. Yeah, give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram. Give this video a like so more Minnesota Vikings fans can find us as well. And if you're not watching the live stream, be sure to leave your comments even after the live stream ends, and we'll always try to respond to those as well. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.